us to the next slide. Some housekeeping. We are recording. We have roughly 30 minutes to spend together today. Our agenda is the introduction of kind of our topic and what we're going to do, a little survey for you all, and then discussion of topics. We will share resources and links via chat and encourage you to do the same if you have some items that you think would be useful to the group. If there are additional questions that come up, feel free to use the chat for that as well. And if we're in the middle of a conversation, if you can kindly raise your hand to get the floor, and we'll do our best to get to you. And with that, let's continue. We just wanted to launch in really quickly by saying some things that we are always thinking about for any event. I trust that these are probably on your short list as well, but just in case, I want to bring them to your attention. First and foremost, focus on goals. You want to stay focused. It's, I think, maybe easier now more than ever with virtual events to kind of wander and maybe be a little uncertain of what goals are for events, even for those who've done for a really long time. So when in doubt, coming back to your goals, it helps actually even to write them out at the start of your planning and keeping everyone together on that. Next up is audience. Who are you trying to reach? How many people are you trying to reach? These types of considerations will, connected with what your goals are going to help to drive you to the platform that you want to use, right? Is a Zoom meeting like we're doing today optimal? Do you want to do a broadcast? And we can jump into any of those questions as we move along. Timing, time of day, day of the week, and the length of your program. I think we all know Zoom fatigue is real, and the options for folks are really tremendous, right? There's a lot of opportunity for people to engage in events. So we want to make sure that we're using people's time wisely. In terms of the time of day, are you just trying to reach local folks? Are you trying to reach people that are maybe spread out across the US? Are you trying to reach folks internationally? I think I saw a friend that's helping to plan convocation on this call, and we have a lot of international students that we're trying to make sure that we can reach as well. So we're picking a time later in the day than we might have otherwise to accommodate that group. And finally, dynamic content and engagement. Right? We're using a PowerPoint slide today because it's what's going to work for us in this particular discussion, but you might want to consider some other ways of doing things. I'm going to go ahead and send it over to Liz, and she's going to talk about some potential topics that we think that you might be interested in today, and then we'll take a little vote.
Great. Hi, everyone, and thank you to Jill. So we know that time is short. We just have 30 minutes with everybody, and in consideration of the Zoom fatigue that Jill was just talking about, we wanted to keep our conversation dynamic as well today. And so what we would like to do, Jill and I have put together a list of topics that are definitely things that we think we should all be thinking about when it comes to events, and we want to know which is the most important to you. So I'll just run through the choices, and then we're going to do a little bit of a poll. The first topic is accessibility. And so when thinking about accessibility in your events and your planning, some of the things we might be talking about, providing resources for would be captioning, subtitles, accessibility for the visually impaired, and interpretation. Different engagement tools. That's one of the topics we can talk about today. So keeping your audience engaged, keeping them participated, and also keeping your content dynamic. We've got miscellaneous. There are a number of items that we were thinking about that didn't fall squarely into one category, and you might even have some extra miscellaneous items to add to this list. So if you want to talk about those, we've got miscellaneous. Music licensing. You know, one nice thing about doing our virtual events online and going digital is being able to kind of get everybody excited with some music, add some ambiance. It very quickly ups the production value of what you're doing. But are you being legal when you're doing it? So let's have that conversation. Presenters. So tips and tricks for the presenters that you're using when you're filming your live or as live webinar. The importance of rehearsals, everybody's internet connection. We can dive a little bit deeper into those things. And then, of course, the big beast that is production. And so when we're thinking about production, here are some of the topics we were thinking about. What's a meeting versus an event? What broadcast platform should you be using? Do you do it as live? Is it a hybrid? Is it pre-recorded? And all of that good stuff. So again, to run down that list, we've got accessibility, engagement tools, miscellaneous, music licensing, presentations, and production. And if I'm doing this correctly, you should all see a poll. So if you can just go ahead and select which one you'd like to discuss first. Hopefully we can all, wow, okay. Hopefully we can all get to some of those other topics too. But again, we want to make the best use of your time. And Jill and I may or may not have been trying to predict what everybody was going to pick, so we'll see if we were right. Looks like, okay, it looks like everyone's voted. So I'm going to end this. I'm going to share the results. And it looks like, can everybody see? It looks like engagement tools are our winner today, Jill.
All right. Excellent.
So let me do this. I'm going to stop sharing the results. And we are going to kick our conversation off today on engagement tools. So what I'm going to do is stop our screen share, and we'd love to kind of just get a discussion going with everybody. Jill and I have some topics to start off with. And again, what I can do here is just quickly go back to this slide. Here we go. So feel free to participate in this conversation. We definitely wanted it to be, you know, your kind of in-person breakout room situation. And so some of the pieces that Jill and I were thinking about when we're thinking about engagement tools, there are lots of different engagement tools based on the kind of event you're having. Is it an award ceremony? Is it a meeting like this? Everything is going to depend on how you want your audience to interact with you. And then, of course, your budget is going to be a huge thing too. And so some of the engagement tools that we've used and we found that we wanted to share with you are as follows. Kahoot. Likely lots of you have heard or even participated in this most recently. It's a great tool if you're looking to do something really fun, like a very vibrant word cloud or a trivia game. There's kind of like lots of flashing lights and music. There's so many different options for the kinds of questions you can be asking people, and it's very, very easy as far as your users go. You can integrate it as into your Zoom presentation, and then the attendees of your event can go ahead and use something like Kahoot with your phone. Similarly, in that vein, but less gamey, you've got something like Mentimeter. And what we can do with Mentimeter is we can direct you to Kimberly Epperson in our office. She did a great presentation on Mentimeter. But again, very much in the same way, but slightly less gamey than a Kahoot, slightly less sort of trivia or quiz based, but it definitely allows for fun visuals, dynamic content with media, and it's easy for your audience members to engage via a tablet or a phone or another browser on the computer. If you want to go simple, very simple and straightforward, just a quick Zoom poll. I've definitely been in a number of meetings and events recently where they've kicked it off with a Zoom poll. And I think what it does as an event producer, especially in situations like this, is it really allows you to see what your audience is thinking, so you can kind of really gear your conversation and content towards what is going to be most beneficial for them. And so just to move on to the next one, and I'll go ahead and move it over to Jill, and I'll bring up this list again so that everybody can have a quick look at what it is we're talking about.
And you may have noticed, but as Liz was talking, I was dropping in the URLs into the chat so you can find some more information. I've included the really ugly link is to some more information about how to make that Zoom poll happen. So a couple of other things that Liz has listed here is Poll Everywhere. I think most of these, if not all of them, have a free option. So you can either try it out yourself or, kind of use it in a small setting to see if it's something that you like. Poll everywhere, I think, is it can be really fun. You can do word clouds and the like, and folks can just are with most of these are texting from the comfort of their own phone, which I think works really well. Slido has a really neat capability where you're putting in, you can actually integrate it directly into your slide presentation, and it does a bit of a toggle back and forth, which, when your internet connection is working well, works really well. So you can tell that there's a cautionary story there. I did attempt to use this, had practiced it all, and then the internet failed in the room that I was in. So we did raising of hands instead. But that was right before COVID kicked in. And then I'm going to send it back to Liz for the video and photo design. I also just want to re-encourage folks. I see everybody here has their cameras off. If people are being shy because we're recording, I totally get that. But if you are interested in participating in a conversation, feel free to turn those cameras on, and or send in your questions or comments via the chat or raise your hand. Liz, you want to take the video? Mute.
Oh, I'm muted. What not to do in a Zoom meeting. Something else that we really thought that lived here as part of dynamic content too are the really great software features that exist online, that allow you to create additional pieces of very dynamic content to put in your event. And so these are things that very much encompass video and photo design. So perhaps you want to do a quick intro video, or maybe it's as simple as putting a nice slideshow together. I've listed 3 here and we'll put them up in the chat, but one is called Animoto, and I know that's something that Advancement are currently using to put together some videos for their donors. Vimeo Create have just launched their own, and perhaps some of you have got some great ones to share as well. And then of course Canva is another tool. These all have various levels of free and paid services to them, but I will add, with services like Animoto, like Video Create, and like Canva, you are able to choose from a really great bank of images, videos, text, animation, and music that are already licensed. So you don't have to worry about any kind of copyright infringement, or that you're doing anything illegal in your event. Then another piece of that is that many of these offer great templates and really wonderful kind of drag and drop features. And so if you are, obviously this is the level of you presenting something yourself, but if you're looking for just to put something quick and easy together to kind of keep the content of your event nice and spicy, then I think these are really great tools for you to use. So
Right.
if with that, there are folks in our meeting today. I see we have got, a number of people in here. Does anybody have any experience that they want to share with any of these platforms? Any successes or challenges? Or maybe there's a platform that Jill and I have not mentioned here, that you've used that you found to be really great? Or any questions?
All right, we must be doing a great job, Liz. We have stunned them into silence. Are you going to take us through another poll for what we want to do next?
If you could give me just 1 second, I am going to bring up.
And we have a question while you're doing that, Liz, a question about Kahoot. Is there a limit on the number of participants? I'm less familiar with that, so is that something you can answer?
I am aware that with Kahoot, it's going to be based on what your license looks like for the number of participants. They have, I don't know them off the top of my head, but they have different levels and different subscription levels. So it's my understanding that you can go ahead and just subscribe on like a monthly basis, but they do have education plans too. So that would be what we would sign up for at UC San Diego. And then I know, for instance, they have like one-off event plans. So if you had a huge event that you were running with 2,000 people, you could go ahead and just get a plan just for that one specific day.
Great. Thanks, Liz.
I'm going to I'm going to do this. My Zoom isn't playing, so I'm just going to relaunch the same question, but please don't pick engagement tools unless you would like to hear Jill and I talk again about engagement tools. So if you would like to go ahead and choose the next topic, so we've got, production, presenters, accessibility, miscellaneous, music licensing. It's a bit of a contest here, I think. It's kind
Yeah, it is.
of neck.
This is kind of fun. I've never
Yeah.
used this feature before. I like it. All right.
Is that
I
it?
think, yeah, I think the only two people that haven't voted are you and I. So we've got
It's a tie.
a tie between accessibility and production. Why don't we
Oh, and
take, which one do you want to take first, Liz?
why don't we touch on accessibility?
Okay, great.
And then we did have another question in here from Special Events and Protocol to everyone. Do you have to have video editing skills for Animoto? And I think the nice answer to that is no. Animoto is a really fantastic drag and drop tool. And so you choose your blocks, blocks of text, blocks of video. You can choose from different layouts, and you can just drag and drop and trim clips and kind of fit them in the order that you would like them to be in. So it's a really, I think, great introduction if you are haven't edited anything before.
Excellent. So we were going to start with accessibility, and Liz has put together a great little one sheet for us that she's going to go ahead and share in the chat at some point during this conversation. Some of the things that we had on the list were, there we go, captioning and subtitles, visually impaired, and interpretation. And I can tell you my personal experience with captioning and subtitles has been interesting. So, in producing 9 ceremony broadcasts for commencement, we had decided as a planning team that we were going to offer ceremonies this year. This was pre-COVID in 3 languages. So we typically have been doing captioning at the live event in English for a number of years now, in addition to doing American Sign Language. The captioning actually works really, really well in that particular case. So we were prepared to continue that. But the add-on that we wanted to do this year was to be able to meet the needs of our Mandarin speaking, mostly parent population, as well as our Spanish speaking, again, mostly parent population there. So folks that are coming and wanting to celebrate with their families. So when we decided to go with the broadcast, and it ultimately turned into 9 different broadcasts, we said, let's carry on. So that was 27 different interpretation or captioning streams rather. And it was challenging to say the least. It was definitely a scramble between having all of our recording done in time in order to send it off, being able to source a great captioning company that can manage that in different languages. So we ended up using 2 different companies, and we'll drop some of that information in the chat as well. But if anybody wants to have a side conversation about that or some questions here today, I'm happy to take those. And then specifically on interpretation, we've got a series of town halls, and hopefully you guys have seen those and maybe even participated in one or more. And there's a parent and family town hall that's coming up, and they are going to attempt to do those in 3 separate languages as well. And they're going to do that via interpretation, most likely, rather than captioning. Though an option is to do the town hall in English, and then when it's posted, post it to the YouTube channel and allow for Spanish captions at that time. Liz, what did you want to add for us about your work with Office for Students with Disabilities so far?
Well, I wondered if, let me just make sure I'm dragging this over. I did upload the doc onto the chat, but what I can do for you right here, if it's helpful for everybody, is I can quickly sort of walk everyone through this document. Can everybody see this? Can everyone see the document?
Yep. And Grace is asking what companies we used for the captioning, and I'm going to go ahead and drop those in the chat.
Okay, fantastic. And so something, and I'm going to reference our social sessions events that we ran with the Staff Association recently. We were really cognizant of the fact that we wanted these events to be open to all staff and accessible to all staff. And so we reached out to the Office for Students with Disabilities, or OSD. And so Joanna Bovell is the director of this office. Her contact detail is on this document along with the website. On the website also they do have a one sheet about making your events accessible. I would definitely encourage you to follow up with Joanna, as I'm not 100% sure that that has been updated for events in virtual time, and they've quite often pertain to in-person events. But what was really nice is we did let her team know the events that we were trying to do and what measures we should take to let potential attendees know that we were interested in making the event accessible for them. And so if you're not holding something like a commencement or a very large event where you're automatically going to be providing services for the visually impaired or captioning services, we would definitely recommend, and this is at Joanna's recommendation, that you include a small paragraph on wherever it is you're advertising your event about your event information, letting people know that they can request an accommodation for this event. And so obviously to choose whichever method of communication works best for you. And you can read through that. Then live captioning in Zoom, we put a link there to using closed captioning with Zoom. And then also some caption companies that we have experience with. I don't know if Jill, you want to expand on that?
Yeah, I was just dropping that into the chat. We use Caption Labs specifically for the Spanish and Mandarin translations, or captioning for commencement that I mentioned. We haven't used Caption First. They come very highly recommended, though, from a favorite production company of ours. So to me, that's good enough. There is another company that campus has used kind of with some regularity. They're not a company that I would necessarily recommend at this time. So if you have specific questions about that, I'm happy to answer those privately.
Great. And then also we have on there the interpretation services portal. And so that's a great resource if you are holding an event and you are expecting an internationally diverse attendance population, then you can reach out to them and they will be able to help you find what you need in terms of interpreters. Fantastic. So does anyone have anything they would like to share with us, or any experiences with accessibility? Well, sorry, something that I didn't add either. I don't have any links, but I am aware from the Office of Students for Disability that they do have resources for the visually impaired also. So if that's, I know we just focused on interpretation and closed captioning, but there's something specifically on campus where they will set you up with what you need for your event. So definitely Joanna is a great resource for you.
Awesome. Thanks, Liz. Any questions from our group here today? Anything specific you were hoping to learn or get a beat on, or troubles you've been having? Okay, let's go ahead and switch over to production. I think this is a big one, and this might take us through the rest of our discussion for today. Liz, would you mind, if you can, showing us that slide again? Oh, you are on it. Okay, folks, there's a lot here. So if there's something in particular you want to hear about first, go ahead and jump in with that. Liz, do you want to grab any of this in particular?
I think that one of the sort of main questions that we are always trying to answer is what is a meeting, and what's an event, and what's the right platform going to be for what you're doing, because there are so many platforms out there, and obviously we very much have access to Zoom, but we know in the past that some events really have a sort of very kind of heavy social component to them, where others are going to feature kind of more of a message that we want to get out there. And so I think that being sort of very clear about what your goals are for the event and what's the information you want to share, what does your audience, who are your audience, the time of day, and all of those pieces that Jill mentioned earlier is going to kind of feature very heavily into those. And also to have a think about, do we need to be asking a separate set of questions to ourselves as far as what your goals are for the event, or also to a client of running an event as well, kind of almost like a choose your own adventure infographic box. So it's kind of like, do I want a sandwich at the end? And so you start off with the question, well, am I hungry? If it's yes, you go this way. If it's no, you go a different way. And we were talking to our partners over at Show Imaging about this recently. They, along with another event producer, the CSUs and UCs run an event production conference, and some of us from Special Events and Protocol have been involved in the planning for day 3, which is next week. And so a topic that we're really hoping to dive into with some local production managers are, how do we shift our priorities, and how do we really drill down to whether we should be holding a meeting versus an event? What's the right broadcast platform for our event? What is the difference between a broadcast platform and a meeting software? What are the best engagement tools? And really trying to kind of demystify that. So that's a free conference to go to. There have been 2 so far, and so if you haven't seen the link, there's been some really great topics, and then also some great conversation as well, and it's really nice to see what our colleagues on other campuses around California are doing. So Jill, I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
Not necessarily. I think that we can kind of continue the conversation with the live as live and asynchronous, right? This all kind of ties together, and not included here, but is hybrid, right? So right now, let me just say, there's so many questions surrounding events. When can we get back to do this in person? There is an events task force. More information will be forthcoming, we hope, in the next month or so. That gives some better guidelines across campus about kind of where we're at right now and what we anticipate, at least our near future, to be, best we can tell. And so the hybrid piece is still a little bit up in the air. However, when you're making these decisions, right, do you want to do it live? Do you want to do it as live? Do you want to do it asynchronous? It kind of goes to that same thing, like which population are you trying to reach, right? If you have a bunch of people and you're really just trying to push information to them, perhaps asynchronous is the best way to go, right? Make that content available to them, perhaps starting at a particular time and then available kind of whenever they want to access it after that. As live is what we did with commencement. And we did that for a couple different reasons, but one of them is we wanted it to feel as though it were a real event in as much as we possibly could. And in order to do that, we selected a particular time, which happened to have been the time that these all-campus ceremony would have occurred. And that's when we launched all 9 of those ceremonies concurrently in an as-live situation. Afterwards, they were then available asynchronously, so you can kind of blend these too. Any event that we do live, I think the risk is higher. Everybody's focused on a really small little screen, right? There is no detail that goes unnoticed, so keep that in the back of your mind. But it's really useful to consider a live event when you want to do something like we're doing right now, right? Where your hope is to have a dialogue with folks and make it feel as engaging and as kind of in person as possible. And we have, I don't want to run out of time before we touch on a couple of these other things. So I'm going to just say that for the run of show, we have a great document. We are not afraid to borrow when necessary, and our colleagues at CSU pulled together a great run of show document for virtual events that we are going to go ahead and share with you. And additionally, we also have concocted a tech rehearsal little checklist that we're going to share with this group too. Tech rehearsal for virtual events. If you've done virtual events already, I think you realize the import of them. And it's helpful. I think use the list that we're going to share as a jumping off point, but think about those things that are most critical to you and be sure to add those to the list, right? It's very easy to get overwhelmed in this type of environment. And key with tech rehearsals, when possible, is do them early and often. We find we were just doing a tech rehearsal for a town hall, and there were some questions that came up literally in the minutes immediately preceding our meeting, and it may have been better to try to get those handled in advance. And sometimes you don't know what you don't know until you're in it. And for staffing, right? Liz and I think, are really fortunate today because we have each other and we're tag teaming this, right? She's dropping stuff in the chat when I'm talking and vice versa. We're admitting people through the waiting room. We're encouraging you all to participate. So make sure that you have that team. That run of show document, I think, has a really good framework for staffing and what to consider of what you would need for a virtual event. And then when to call in a production team. If it's too big, right, the number of people that you're trying to reach, or if the stakes are too high, or if you really are going, you feel that the production value is going to be more than you can attain kind of on your own, are all kind of good trips to when to call in the troops. And perhaps what you need is something like some studio support, like we saw with the loft earlier, or maybe you need some recording in advance. You just never know. So if you need those resources, please reach out to Special Events and we're happy to direct you. We're also continuing to do some research on what the options in San Diego and beyond are. All right, it looks like Liz was able to add the virtual event plan template. And what about that checklist? Liz, are you able to drop that in as well? Okay. All right, so she's shaking her head. I think that means it's on its way. All right, folks. Liz, did you want to switch to our last slide? Our closing slide? Liz and I have been really, really happy to be able to have this discussion today. We hope that you've gotten a little nugget that's useful and was worth your time. Um, the information, these are sessions are recorded. The earlier session was recorded. They'll be posted to the Events Council website that you can find on the link. And we hope that you will join us again in a couple months when we have our next Events Council meeting. Liz, is there anything you'd like to add?
No, other than this is the last chance if anyone has any quick questions. But also, I would think that if you have any questions that you think of outside of this meeting, then our office are always all ears, and we love having dialogue and conversation and sharing ideas. So please reach out to us.
Okay. Thanks, everyone. We'll be here for a few more minutes if anything comes up.
Hi, Jill.
Yes, go ahead.
I'm Paul Tagliaferri, and I coordinate the annual Diversity Awards, which is now called the Inclusive Excellence Awards.
Yes.
And of course, we're going to go virtual this year. We're looking for a date, first week of February. We always record the awardees, the recipients, and then we play that back to the audience. What we're kind of contemplating this year is whether we want to record the entire thing and just run it, or do we want to have the presenters, and what I need by presenters are like the Chief Human Resources Officer, Nancy Resnick. She usually introduces the Chancellor. The Chancellor has about a 2 or 3 minute speech. And then he introduces Vice Chancellor Becky Pettit. We don't know whether to have those live and then go into the recorded videos of the recipients, or just
Sure.
record the whole thing.
Oh, good question. I feel like those particular folks that you've talked about can do very well kind of in either situation. Um, I think it comes down to Paul, kind of what we call trim level, kind of what level of trim do you want that particular event to have. I think when you pre-record everything, it gives you a measure of security, kind of about the quality of the product.
Mhm.
But again, the flip side of it is maybe it seems just a little bit more impersonal
Right.
than you're really hoping to
Mhm.
get. So I personally can make an argument either way, and I'm going to throw it to Liz to see if she has a strong feeling one way of the other. Would you do live or a mix of live and pre-recorded, Liz, or something like that?
I think I'm the same as you, but I think there is still that sort of live element. And so I think that a nice mixture of maybe live and pre recorded, I think sometimes definitely messaging that you definitely want to make sure gets across and very firm talking points and things like that. It's almost nice to have some pieces pre recorded so you can kind of make sure that everything you need to be have happen is being captured, but then there's something to be said for kind of nice kind of live reactions and
Yeah. I will say one potential complication is if you do the mix of live and pre-recorded, and it is what platform you're going to use, right? Because showing video through Zoom is not always fantastic. It can be really jumpy and not play the way, right? It's not really optimized for a lot of the high definition files that we have today. And so that makes it maybe not play quite so well. So in that case, like doing kind of what I would call more the broadcast level, which you can either do as live or asynchronous, right? You can post it and say, hey, come here for this content. I think you probably would want to do it as live in either case, if you're not going to include a live component. But something like that it is where maybe using a production company could be really helpful because they can kind of help navigate between those two pieces, which we internally haven't necessarily found a great solution to blend those pieces together.
Right. Thanks a lot.
Sure.
Another piece to that, and I don't want to use up too much of your time. We would like to have the presenters or the executives present from one specific place, like maybe from the loft, in lieu of just sitting at their desks
Sure.
and talking to the audience from their desk. So, what do you think of that? Like having a podium set up in the loft and then having them present like they're presenting to an actual audience.
Yeah, I think that that's great. I really like that a lot. And I know the loft is working. I don't know if they mentioned it earlier. We had to jump off, but I understand that they're working on potentially some other backgrounds as well.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
they can have a little bit more variety. I would caution right now, like February is a long way away in the COVID world. Right now, switching directly from one speaker to another at a podium is not something that I feel fantastic about. Recording them in advance at that same location, I feel a little bit better about because then you can do some cleaning of your microphone and your surfaces, right? So, but using that same space, right? We've seen it for county news broadcast and whatnot, but just kind of the level that the campus is working to, that would make me a little bit cautious at this time.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Of course. Yeah. Thank you for the question. I appreciate it. All right, everyone. I think that that's it for today. Thank you so much. We'll see you next time. Bye bye.